Blog Talk Radio.
You're tuned into N5D Radio, the next dimension in radio, where we bring you the hottest, in-depth, spiritual, metaphysical, esoteric conversations and news. Get ready for spirit, body, and mind to expand in 3, 2, 1, 1, 1, 1.
Greetings, and welcome to Quantum Healing with Candace. This show focuses on humankind's new understanding and acceptance of the quantum world and the role that consciousness plays in shaping both our individual and our collective reality. Today is October 9th, 2015, and I believe that Mercury went direct today, and hopefully the massive confusion and most of the chaos of the last week is now behind us. Before I welcome my guests this evening, I would like to take a moment to thank Greg Prescott and Michelle Walling of N5D Radio, who support and sponsor this show. Thank you, you lovely people. You can't know how sponsoring this show has already changed so many lives. This program is based upon the foundation of the work of the late, great Dolores Cannon, who was my teacher, my mentor, and my friend. It was my honor to be trained by her and work closely with her for several years before her death. I'm the creator and the manager of her original support forum community for practitioners that will soon be moving into its 8th year. My guests today are two lovely ladies and colleagues, powerhouse practitioners of QHHT, which is quantum healing hypnosis, which is what Dolores' method is now called. We have Barbara Becker, who's a quantum healing hypnosis technique level 2 practitioner, and she's based in Arizona. After a near-fatal accident in 1986 and a Meet Your Guardian Angel meditation 10 years later, Barbara discovered that she's a healer. She became a Reiki master in the Usui tradition. Hey, guess what, Barbara? Me too. And she's an angel communicator. After years of metaphysical studies, meditations, workshops, and her personal healings, she received a shamanic opening ceremony in the spring of 2003. And on the night of that ceremony, she began speaking a healing mathematical star language not found on Earth. We have to ask her about that one. She began channeling healing for groups of people with the language, and by moving her arms and hands in the air and speaking and taking to a person in her past life, healing them instantly and bringing them back into the present moment. This was all done unconsciously. Barbara has an interesting background. She's a retired critical care and emergency room nurse. She holds an associate degree in nursing and a bachelor's of science degree in business. And Barbara's world travel over 24 years has taken her to places in Asia, Europe, South America, Australia, New Zealand, and she's been opening stargates. And I know she's also traveled to Arkansas because I met her there this past summer. Barbara wrote and published her book, Enclosure, a spiritual autobiography in 2012. And in it, she shares her journey of being a skeptic. Really, Barbara, you were a skeptic? And who she is today with stories of miraculous healings, including reversal of death. Boy, there's another one I want to ask you about, Barbara. Barbara writes and publishes a monthly blog and newsletter, lots of articles. She channels her higher self, known as the White One, collective of beings who come from the great central sun creator source. She offers this service to the public through her monthly star energy telephonic conferences where participants receive healing and answers to their personal questions. And that's just one of our guests tonight. That's Barbara Becker. I'm going to say hi to Barbara. Hold on. Let's see. Working on the tech issues here. Hi, Barbara.
Hi, I'm here.
Well, I'm glad that you are. I know. Yeah, she is. I'm sorry. My assistant is helping me and making sure our second guest is on, and she is, but I'm going to introduce her after just saying a very brief hello to Barbara. I'm glad you're on, Barbara. You know, Mercury was supposed to be done, but I don't know if it is or not. We're having some issues here.
Yeah, we're making the most of it, and we're just sliding in till the end tomorrow, so that's good. That's okay.
Is it really tomorrow? I actually thought the end was like today, so I got that wrong.
Oh, yeah. Well, then it's supposed to stop today, but then we have like a little, like a transitioning of it diminishing over the next week. That's what the astrologers tell us. So
okay. Well, let me before we continue talking, let me introduce our second guest, and that is Holly Duckworth. Holly is also an amazing quantum healing hypnosis practitioner. And she practices with Aware Care in Durango, Colorado. She has a PhD in psychology. Wow, Holly, a PhD. And she is a retired psychotherapist in the state of Colorado. Holly was trained by Dolores Cannon as well and has a level 2 certificate. So Holly came to QHHT through a tragic situation with her son. He was briefly incarcerated for a DUI, and during this incarceration, he started reading Convoluted Universe 4 and told Holly about the book and Dolores. And in order to connect with her son, Holly bought the book and read it too. She immediately became a devoted follower, traveled with her son to see Dolores at a seminar, and then quickly became a practitioner, and she's now been practicing QHHT for almost 3 years. Holly's background is in the technical, industrial, corporate world, about as far away from QHHT as you can get. She has a BS in mechanical engineering and an MS in management, and in addition to her PhD, so she's a studious gal. She's an industrial expert in process improvement, maintenance, reliability, sustainability, training, and development, and she calls herself left-brained. She's published 2 adult books on the subject of sustainability and social responsibility, and she's in the process of writing 7 children's books on subjects about social responsibility. And Holly and her husband live in Durango and stay very busy fixing up their log cabin and working on their small farm. Well, we have something in common there. Holly, I live on a farm too. Welcome, Holly.
Thank you, Candace. I'm glad to be here. Yeah, I've got the sheets of plastic over the garden now, trying to protect my lettuce until the last possible minute.
Bless your heart. I've got some places to do all that, and I keep looking at it going, I'm going to do it. I'm going to plant. I'm going to. And then I just stay so busy I haven't done it. Well, I want to welcome both of you to this show, and I want to tell you that I'm so excited to see you on the airwaves here with me again after, being able to spend a little bit of time with you over the summer. I'm so thrilled to have you here because truly the two of you are active, amazing QHHT practitioners, and today we're going to talk about all kinds of things and stories and different sessions you've had and some amazing information that really aligns with so much of what we've learned from our teacher, Dolores Cannon. So it's been a hectic, crazy week, and I can't tell you how much I've been looking forward to tonight. So welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you, Candace.
Well, why don't we start with you, Barbara? Why don't you tell us how you learned about QHHT? How did you find out about it? How did you come to this work?
Okay, sure. Well, I went camping by myself in the woods of northern Arizona in 2013 in the summer. and specifically to meet a group of Arcturians, because I heard that you can meet Arcturians in this area as well as other star beings. And when I went to sleep that night and woke up the next morning, and I felt, okay, I didn't remember anything. I know you can meet them when you are in your dreams. And I went home the next day, and I was talking with a friend of mine who had encounters with beings her whole life, and she had a regression done by Dolores. This is the first I heard of Dolores Cannon. And she suggested, why don't you go to Dolores Cannon's website and find a practitioner in your area? So I said, okay. So I found Holly's name and phone number, wrote it down, and said, okay, when I get back in town from the ranch, I'll contact her. And I went into the living room here at the ranch and did a meditation. And my third eye opened up, and I saw the whole scene like a movie, much like what happens in a past life regression. And there I went on board the ship and received an implant, and I asked them, what is this for? And they said it's to upgrade my light code. And when I woke up the next day, I did have a raised red area on my skin of my left outer thigh. And that stayed there for about 2 weeks, and then it went away. I do have a photo of it. Well, I got back to the Phoenix area, and I contacted Holly. I had not read any of Dolores' books or seen any of her videos, and I called her and said, well, what is this? And Holly, do you want to take part of the story from here?
Sure,
Holly. Okay.
So
she's there.
Yeah. So I'm practicing in Phoenix. My husband and I have been here in Durango for a couple of years, and Barbara is one of the many clients that I was seeing at the time in my quote spare time at that time in Phoenix. And so she came in for a session, had a fantastic session. It was textbook, beautiful. Higher self came in beautifully, had a wonderful, wonderful experience. And it was funny, though, because when she first came into at the time I was practicing in my home, and she comes into my home, and, Candace, we're doing the interview, as we do in QHHT, very thorough interview process, and I'm getting to know Barbara, and I'm sitting there thinking to myself, why is she here? She's this incredible star healer and so aware and so connected. I'm like, what on earth is she going to get out of a QHHT session? She doesn't need this. She's already plugged in. And so I'm feeling, quite humble in her presence at this moment. I'm going, okay, if she really wants it, I'll go through the steps, but I don't think she needs it. So, Barbara, you want to take it back from there?
Okay. Well, I specifically had asked for my thyroid to be healed. I had hypothyroidism, and I was taking a naturopathic preparation, and I don't want to take anything. And during that session, Holly said that when they did the scan on me, my body turned into a waveform. You remember that, Holly?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yep.
So and after that session, my thyroid
Can I interrupt? Can I interrupt and ask a question there? Because these are the kinds of things that I know that our listeners are very interested in. So, okay, your body turned into a waveform. So what I want to know is this. Did it actually physically turn into a waveform as you're watching it, or is this like an in your mind's eye kind of thing happening? I mean, which is it, if you can even say if there's a difference between the two things? I know that our listeners are interested in that.
Sure. So let me set the stage a little bit here. That so she's lying in a bed. on a queen size bed, and I think, Barb, you had your knees propped up with pillows and the pillow under your head, and she's kind of very well nested, if you will, in the bed, and we're at this point where we're doing the physical healing, we're well into the session. So we've gone through a lot of investigation and looked at past lives and had some conversation with the higher self. So we're way into the session now. And for those of us that are the facilitators in a session, this is pretty tough work because your attention is totally devoted. I mean, you are on spot with your attention span during the entire session because you don't know what's going to happen next, right?
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah, so by this time in the session, you're a little mentally exhausted, right? But you're still on point with the attention span. And for Barbara, at this point during the healing part, her body physically, with my eyes wide open, I'm watching her nested in this bed, and her body is vibrating. I don't even know the words to describe it. It's undulating. Her body is undulating. That's the right word. Her body's undulating. And then, of course, in my mind's eye, I can see the energy. With my third eye, I can see the energy waves that are going through her body. Yeah. So that experiences like that can kind of tends to wake you up, right? And
yeah.
Pay even more attention.
And Candace, when I do sessions with clients, it's not unusual for me to see with my physical eyes the client's body turns into white light. And I've even had times when the whole room is a brilliant white light during the healing part.
Yes. It sometimes does work like that. And, I have to tell you, ladies, I just had the undulating thing. And when the fellow sat up, I mean, this happened just a few days ago. And when he sat up, he looked at me and he said, he said, I felt that. I didn't know my body could do that. It was the same sort of thing. It's like, what is it? It's like that dance move, where the people put their arms out and they make it look like they're doing the wave. That happens throughout the entire body. And sometimes more visibly and more physically than others. Sometimes it's a little more subtle, but that doesn't always. We should say, shouldn't we, ladies, that doesn't always indicate healing or not healing, but it is one of the more visible signs that sometimes happen. So, did that heal your thyroid issue, Barbara?
Yes, I don't take anything at all, so that's gone.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's really great. So you had the session, and then what happened?
Well, Holly called me a couple days later and said, "Could I do another session with you, higher self again?" And I said, "Sure." So we did another session. It was kind of cool because we got to use the keyword, and then I went right into the, I believe it was parallel lives. And so that was very, very fascinating.
That's amazing. So you two have been friends ever since then.
We have. Well, we really have.
So would you like to know how I got into QHHT, or did you want to?
Sure, absolutely. So you had a session, and then what happened?
Yeah. So I had 2 sessions with her, and that was in 2013. And then about a year later, last year at this time, Holly called me. And Holly, do you want to tell your part of this? And we'll come back to my part.
Right. So I had some insight. One of the things that begins to happen as you start to practice QHHT, and even if you, frankly, even not necessarily even practicing, but once you've had a few sessions yourself, and as practitioners, we want to have sessions, where we're the person that's going into trance. And so I have over the years since practicing QHHT really gotten a very strong connection to my higher self. And so I've become much, much more prescient about, things that are going to happen, things that need to happen, and just, making sure that I'm walking the path in my life. And I got a really big knock on my metaphysical door from my higher self that said, call Barbara, make sure that she becomes a practitioner. This is her. And at the time, Barbara, I don't think, Barbara, you had any intention whatsoever of being a QHHT practitioner. She had all of her angel work going on and all of her other healing modalities going on. She didn't need QHHT added to her list of modalities. So I call her, and Barb, I don't think we had seen each other for maybe a year. I mean, we had talked on the phone and casually, chit-chatted here and there, but I call her up and basically say, hey, Barb, you need to be a QHHT practitioner. How do we make this happen? So she did. She went and took the training and
can I share what happened to come to that decision? I got the protocol for doing a QHHT session on myself. So I told her I'm about ready to do one, and I'm going to ask that question. Is this something that's in alignment with my soul? So I put myself down into that theta level, and I was taken off the planet just like you do with Google Earth, and I was put into Pompeii and Ercolano, what we know as Herculaneum, Italy. And I saw that she and I were both men, and we had a very successful metal pipe business. We made and installed the lead pipe system, the underground system, in those two towns. And so I asked my higher self, is this in alignment to do this? And I was told yes. So I brought myself out, and I text messaged Holly and said, okay. Holly was thinking that because of the work I do unconsciously, apparently I have the ability to take a person into a past life, heal them, and bring them back. And it's all done unconsciously. And she brought a very good point out, was that, people are not even aware of that. But with QHHT, you're actually experiencing it live, and the session is recorded so that you can receive more healing, more information, the expanded consciousness, and a closer connection with your higher self. It really makes it more real for the client. Even though my clients do have healings occurring, this really I saw it as a really good fit. And so I took the course and took the exam, and then began doing sessions.
Wow, Barbara, that's so wonderful.
Candace,
it's just, go ahead.
Candace, Barbara came out of the chute, full speed ahead. I think, Barbara, how many clients did you have within the first 3 months? People were flocking to her.
Yeah, I got booked up from December to June within 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So I have a question for you, Barbara. You've been doing this other sort of, you called it unconscious healing with past lives. So as these stories became sort of verbal and more accessible, to our conscious mind, to your conscious mind, to your client's conscious mind. How did that change things for you? What did you learn about that?
Oh, boy, I've learned that it's wonderful to have it tangible for the client. Because some people have not progressed long enough to be in that awareness, to be trusting and having that inner knowing. And this really helps them along their path to open up, to come into their enlightenment. This is where this is all going.
Sure.
When I took the course, I just sat there and I said, "My God, this is sacred work, and it is an honor." It's an honor.
And I think,
sessions.
yeah, Barbara, if I can just add to that too. You know, I mean, I haven't found another metaphysical healing modality that, many other modalities work and work well. But when the client walks away from a QHHT session, they have a audio recording of unbelievable words of wisdom for them coming from them. So the advice, the wisdom, the direction isn't coming from the facilitator. It isn't coming from the practitioner. It's coming from themselves. Mm-hmm. And how do you deny what came out of your own mouth, right?
Yeah. That's a really good point, Holly. Holly, how did you get involved with QHHT? How did you discover Dolores' work, and how did you come to be a practitioner?
Yeah, well, like you said in that intro, so my son was incarcerated. He was a young man at the time. I think he was 19 or 20, and he was in a situation where we couldn't even visit him. The only connectivity I could have with him was either with a video conference or with a phone call. So as any mother knows, I mean, I was just ripped to shreds at this moment, mentally, and would do pretty much anything to make any sort of connection with him. And he miraculously somehow found Convoluted Universe 4 in jail and started reading it. And so I was on the phone with him. He says, "Mom, you got to read this book." And so I immediately, Amazon, one click, did it, tomorrow I want the book. So that the next time he calls, we can have something to chat about. And I start reading Convoluted 4, and I'm sitting there reading it, and 9 times out of 10 weeping while I'm reading it, and going, everything I've ever believed in my entire life is in this book, and I've never read any other book that aligned so well with my beliefs. And so I was as smitten with the book as he was. So he was in jail for about 20 days, and so he gets out, and immediately after that, we found the Dolores and Julia and Dee Wallace were actually doing a seminar in Sacramento, and we said, we're going, let's go. And I had, of course, Dolores did her group past life regression, and she did the group Meet Your Spirit Guide, and she did the group Future Life Progression scripts. And I personally had just amazing experiences with all three. And with the past life, and at this point, Candace, I mean, I'm a mechanical engineer. I'm in the industrial world. I'm not, I'm not ethereal. I'm not metaphysical. I'm not any of this, right? And I had my own personal first past life experience. It was so shocking and so not what I expected and so real. And I'm sitting there in the seminar and going, oh my gosh, this is real. This is real. This is really real.
Holly, can I interrupt you and have you clarify?
Sure.
So maybe our listeners aren't aware of this, but I believe what you're saying is that Dolores is giving a lecture or whatever, and she's kind of sitting up in the front of usually a ballroom or something, and she's just speaking to a group, and the entire group is led into one of these experiences, and is this where
That's
you're
exactly
saying
right.
that you and
Yes.
Can you share? Can you tell us about the past life?
I can. And so there's about 70 people in this room, and you know, Dolores she has such a presence. She was so humble, but yet so confident and so straightforward, you know, because she had only done what she had done for 45 years. So she wasn't the least bit, you know, lacking in confidence in it. But yet she was a very, very humble person. And of course, yes, she had done some lecturing, and then she begins to lead all 70 people simultaneously through a script that, you know, we're just sitting in chairs in the ballroom, just like you're saying, and and we're relaxing, and they turn the lights down just a little bit, and she goes through some general relaxation, and then she starts the script for getting you to a past life experience. And so in this case, she had us go down into a tunnel, and we're opening up different doors. And I open up a door, and it's like a split screen, and on the left is just stars and the universe, you know, a lot of just black void space, but with these beautiful stars shining. And on the right, I can see my feet. So I said, I'm going to go there. I'm going to go to the right. I'm going to look at these feet, right? And as in a lot of past life regression situations, we start out with assessing our physical condition in how we arrived at this past life. And so I'm looking at my feet, and I'm looking at my hands, and I'm looking at what I'm wearing. And what I am is at this point, I'm a middle-aged African-American lady living in, I think it was either St. Louis or Chicago, but some urban center in a very, very small little, you know, almost like a shack of a house. I was married. I had 3 children, and I remember looking at my hands and my feet. Now I'm Caucasian, and I remember looking at my hands and my feet and seeing that I was African American. I'm looking and I'm going, I never expected that. I didn't expect to be a different race. I don't know why I didn't expect to be, but I didn't. And so I'm looking at my hands and my feet and go, wow, that's really amazing. That's not me. That's someone else. And so I had this. It was what Dolores would call a digging potatoes life. You know, my important scenes were cooking bacon at the stove and hanging laundry and just regular chores going on in that lifetime. Very, very poor, humble situation back in like the turn of the century, you know, 19-teens, 1920s, and went all the way through the death scene, saw myself in the casket, and as an old lady, and I went through the whole experience right there in the hotel ballroom.
Isn't that just amazing? And in not very long of a time either. I mean, that's, you know, it's a pretty short little session, comparatively speaking.
Yeah, all of this is like less than 20 minutes. Yeah.
Well, and I'd like to mention for our listeners that many of our QHHT practitioners, you know, around the country and around the world facilitate these group regressions. And it kind of gives, you know, the public or people in meetup groups or whatever, you know, a taste of what can possibly happen in a one-on-one session. And sometimes, and I have to tell you this, I had a group regression here several years ago of a gal, and she just she had some sort of ET experience during the group regression, and she said it absolutely changed her. And I mean, I still don't even really know the details of it. It just, you know, it was 20 minutes out of my life in a group regression, and it kind of changed the course of everything that she did and thought about. I mean, these things can be powerful, can't they?
Yeah, that's what happened to me. Exactly.
They're transformative. Yeah.
Yeah. So this group progression and going there and listening to Dolores and having this group progression, was that the thing that got you into taking the class then, Holly?
Oh, I came home from Sacramento, I think, on a Sunday and signed up for the class on Monday. I have to do this.
Right. Yeah. So that's just amazing. So so did you try to find a practitioner anywhere then, Holly, or did you just take the class?
I
mean, how did?
I did the online training,
right.
which I do a lot of traveling for my work, and so that's what worked out for me because I spend a lot of time alone in hotel rooms at night, and so it was great place to learn. And so luckily I was living in Phoenix then, and there were several practitioners at that time, and connected with one of them, and we traded sessions. I guess while I was towards the back end of the training, and then after I got trained, the recommendation is that we do several true practice sessions where we're not charging people, and it isn't necessarily for serious therapeutic work, but we're just getting the training wheels off basically. Well, at the time, my daughter was 19 and my son was 21, and so I would line up all their friends, any of these young adults that would let me practice on them. I'd bring them into the house, and they were glorious people to practice with, beautiful golden souls and just innocence and just, very receptive to the process. And I did dozens of these sessions with the friends of my children, and I sit there and I think, oh gosh, if someone had told me what my life purpose was when I was 19,
right?
How lucky these kids are.
Kind of amazing.
So it was fun. Yeah.
Good for you. And so then you two have been swapping sessions then. So I guess we've got an interesting facilitated from Holly that has to do with a bat and some other things, some Dolores Cannon concepts like the backdrop people, which is a fascinating concept, and some other things, and Dolores, I believe herself, may have even made an impression or an appearance there. Would you tell us about that session? So where Barbara was facilitating.
Yeah, sure. So Barbara and I took a road trip to Arkansas. We drove together. I picked her up in Phoenix, and then we drove. What was it, Barb? I think it was 14 hours or 16 hours, and so across 2 days. So we had lots of time to talk it up in the car for 2 days, and got to the level 2 training in Arkansas back in July, and we were bunking together, and so we had lots of time in the evenings to practice sessions with each other. And so in one session where Barbara was facilitating me, I had facilitated Barbara multiple times. So we had a keyword for Barbara. For those that are unfamiliar with it, we have the ability to, when the client is in deep hypnosis, we can insert a keyword so that if we want to have another session with that client, then we can skip through all of the induction script and go straight into deep hypnosis through the use of the keyword. Well, I had a keyword for Barbara because I had multiple sessions where I facilitated and she was the client. But we had never been in the opposite situation because we had never physically been together after she got her training. So
right.
So she
2 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
so she had to take me all.
Yeah.
So she had to take me all the way through all of the past life script, and it was funny because my first past life experience in that session was as a bat, and this goes to show you what kind of a sense of humor our higher selves can have, because I in 3D world in my waking day, I hate bats. Some people are afraid of rats, some people are afraid of snakes, some people are afraid of spiders. I don't mind any of those. I cannot stand bats. Frighten me, okay? I really don't like them. Well, this was the second time they showed me myself as a bat in the past life. And, of course, Barb asks, at the end of the session, why did you show her that past life? And they said, we just think it's funny. We like to poke fun at her because she doesn't like bats, and we think it's funny that, to give her that first-hand perspective. So they have a sense of humor. But then, so we went through the bat life, and it wasn't a very long life. I ended up breaking a wing and then dying. But so Barb, as we do often in sessions, when a past life is very short or boring, not much happening, then we'll do a second or maybe even a third or fourth past life. And so she directs me into a second past life. And at this time, I go to become the universe. I am all that is. I am God's source. So
wow.
Barb realizes she has source on the line. So she kicks into gear to ask some questions. So Barb, you want to reflect on what your perception was at that point?
Yeah, I had asked Holly where would she like to go, and she goes straight to source. So then I found myself talking with God, and it took me a couple seconds here, and I had to do a surrender and just allow whatever questions that were in me to come out. So this is because I didn't have any questions prepared to talk and ask God. So I asked God about the future of the earth, and how does her evolution, her ascension, play a role in the entire universe. And it was a very eloquent course on eventually Mother Earth this old Earth is going to die. And her sister moon is going to come into the gravitational pull of the old Earth, and then they will cause somewhat of an implosion where they will then, their mass will go out to the stars and then form new planets. It was very beautiful. And I had asked, well, what about human life at that time? And God said that human life will be long, long gone when that happens. And as most people know, if they've been following the work of Dolores Cannon and others know, that the new Earth, Mother Earth ascended 12-12-12.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we're all of us here are going back and forth between the dimensions. Some days we're in fifth. We have moments in fifth and fourth and third. And eventually everyone will, that is meant to go to the new Earth, will go to the new Earth. Others will go to other missions and places in the universe, or others will be switched off. And we can talk about the backdrop people later. I also asked about the Apollo moon landing. I wanted to know if it really did occur. I wanted to put this to rest because I've heard so many different theories that it was just a big hoax. And my dad had worked on the Apollo moon project.
Did he?
In Florida. Yeah, he wrote. He worked for General Electric, and he wrote the logistic equations for the computers that detonated the explosives on the capsule when they splash landed into the ocean. Those windows and doors are welded shut. They don't have latches.
Right.
So they use explosives to discharge the window and the doors out so that the astronauts can step out and get into the water and then be taken on helicopter to the ships. Mm-hmm. And so God said, yes, it did happen. Yeah. However, I asked a little further about what is happening on the other side of the moon that we don't see, the dark side.
Good question.
Yeah, I had heard that there's a lot of shenanigans going on with earthly and non-earthly beings, and that there are humans that are being taken there, and it involves the rogue government or a branch of an organization that is doing this type of activity for some gain. However, God said, really, it is really futile what they're doing. It's just like a nuisance. The way I feel about that is that these are experiences that people have signed up for to help them in their soul evolution. And they also have that opportunity to see the big picture and to do the forgiveness work, and which erases all that karma that they may have accumulated in past lives and past experiences. And I also asked about Mars. I wanted to know what was going on there, and that there are third-dimensional beings, non-three-dimensional beings there, and that this is someplace that eventually in the future, that's where humans will be living.
Now, what does that really mean, or did you ask more questions about that? You mean like groups of humans, like just kind of satellite?
It will become the Earth. It will become like the Earth for people, and I'm sure they will be terraforming it. And I think we must remember that our Earth planet here isn't the only Earth-based planet in the universe or in the galaxies. There's more. So I imagine as we leave this existence here, that we can go to other planets. I myself come from a planet outside the solar system. So,
why don't you tell us about that?
Well, I really can't right now because that I know the name of the planet, and I'm saving it for my second book, to my autobiography that's been published. I will reveal that name, but I do in my first book. I do share with people that my other form is a being called a Zagian, and we are beings that don't have emotion. And I'm here to learn about the emotion of love. I'm here to discover it, teach it, know all I can about it. And then at night, I go into a form of liquid light, and I go up to a broadcast station. That's a big, huge, it's like a big white sphere, and I broadcast it out to teach the beings out there about love. I saw that during a past life regression. That was not QHHT many years ago.
I think, too, Candace, if I could interject another really interesting thing that came out of that session, because one of the things that I struggle with is I have one foot in a very technical role in the corporate corporate world, right? I'm a scientist and statistician and engineer, and then I try to then I have the other foot in this metaphysical healing modality, right? And so I'm always trying to figure out, well, which is the right one? Which should I be focused on? Which shouldn't I? You know, these two worlds, there's really not a big overlap right now, right? And so Barb asked my higher self, you know, how will this be rectified? How will, you know, which side will win out in the end, or which one should I focus on? And in that session, the higher self said, fascinating answer. They said that in the very, very near future, our top physicists will make discoveries, physics discoveries, that can't be explained without metaphysics.
Yeah.
Okay. And so,
touche.
It's a very short period of time before there is no separation, that we'll all realize that physics is metaphysics. And so don't worry about it, Holly, because the two sides, the two groups will be integrated in the future.
Holly, that makes me very curious about your colleagues in the very technical corporate world. Do they know what you do when you're not in hotel rooms doing your technical corporate kind of trips?
Some do, and yes, and in fact, I have had sessions with some of my corporate colleagues, and they have found incredible things out about themselves and their all simultaneous lives and past lives, and some very, very interesting things. And you know, obviously, out of a concern for privacy, I won't share any of those now. But yeah, that's happened. Sure.
That's amazing. So your very left brain technical colleagues in that world were open to this kind of exploration.
Yeah, definitely.
Were you surprised about that?
Not as surprised as they were after they had the experiences.
Oh goodness. That's a really good question. So, may I ask back to the session where I guess Barbara was leading Holly? Is that the one where Dolores came through? You know, we're all still big Dolores fans, and any Dolores news on this side of the veil or the other is something that we're all so interested in.
Yes, we both did
through,
that.
Yeah, she came through both of our sessions.
Yeah.
So we have more than one story to talk about with Dolores with you. Yay! Let's hear it.
Yeah.
Well,
Barb, go ahead.
When I was talking with Holly and Holly's subconscious, I asked if it would be possible for Dolores to come through, and sure enough, she did. And I always ask her, you know, do you have a message for us? And she said that she feels very comforted to see that the learning is continuing with QHHT. The technique is being perpetuated and expanded, and she also said that quantum healing hypnosis technique is critically important and is beneficial for those going through the upcoming difficult times. For those that had a QHHT session, they're going to have an easier time going through all these trauma experiences, especially what's going on in the news right now around the world and in the U.S. People have had these sessions. They're able to see the big picture. They're able to see that, you know, it's all going to work out. And that with their connection to their higher self, the higher self was able to let them know that, yeah, you are safe. You're going to be just fine. You're going to have some challenges, but this is all part of the lessons that you signed up for. Dolores.
I think Barb. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Dolores asked that all the practitioners follow the orthodoxy of her work. And what was very interesting, we were chuckling about this the other day, was that Dolores used that word orthodoxy. That means authorized or generally accepted theory, doctrine, or practice. She told me to go look up the definition. and the way this really validates that this was Dolores, because I asked Holly, do you ever use that word, orthodoxy? And Holly said, no. I said, neither do I, ever, in my entire life. So what was she talking about? About the orthodoxy of the changes that are part of the evolution of the QHHT, that it must be honored regarding any experimentation or validation. You know, there's those of us like myself who love to experiment on myself. I will go places that other people don't. However, I do know the safeguards. I know the parameters. I've done things that put me in situations which are not a good place to be metaphysically. However, we have this backup system that we're not even aware of that comes into play. And I'm always grateful for that, okay? So this is something that she just wants us to be aware of, to make sure that if we're seeing the same information coming through multiple people, like she did, that probably is the truth. And it's, even though we're not here to force any belief on anyone, try to convince anyone of anything, it's there out in the open for people to ponder and to see how it fits into their reality, into their belief system. Because that's the bottom line to all of this. What do you believe?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, Candace, when I was facilitating, then Barb and Dolores came through. And at that time, through Barb, and at that time we were right smack dab in the middle of our training, so we had lots of questions about, of course, I had asked her about my technique, and she gave me some advice, and I asked her about Barb's technique, and she gave Barb some specific advice, and then we said, well, do you have any advice for our class in general? And Dolores said, yeah, relax, have fun. And I thought that was great, that, you know, we were maybe taking ourselves a little too seriously at that moment, and it was time to just relax and have fun with the technique. So that was really cool. And then I asked her, I had just finished rereading Conversations with Nostradamus, all 3 volumes, and amazing books. And for anyone that has read Dolores and hasn't read those books, I strongly encourage people to read those. Just unbelievable how the content of those books came about. I think it was across 4 different people Dolores connected directly in real time, not from a historical perspective, but directly to Nostradamus, and had conversations with Nostradamus. And so I wanted to ask Dolores, I said, hey, so now that you're on the other side, because when she wrote the Conversations with Nostradamus, she was really flummoxed with how this whole time thing worked. You know, how could she be sitting in her office, you know, in the 1990s and be talking to Nostradamus in the 1400s? How, like, directly with him? How does time work then? And so I asked in the session when Dolores was coming through Barb, I said, hey, so now that you're on the other side, tell us about this time thing. Did you figure out the Nostradamus thing? Oh, now that do you have that secret? And so, yeah, she said that, you know, She said, all is connected within. And she said it's really, really difficult for us to understand how time really works. But because everything is actually occurring at the same time and existing at the same time, there are these portals that we can use to communicate with people that are in a different time, because everything's really happening all at the same time. And then I said, well, is that the same portal we're using in QHHT for the past life? And she said, yeah, it is. So we are using those same time portals in the past life as she used in Nostradamus. Yeah. And I think that those, just in going back and recently rereading those 3 books, I just want to encourage, Candace, your listeners to read those, because we're here. We're in the time when Nostradamus' predictions were the most dire. And Dolores had 3 different astrologers read the interpretations that Nostradamus had given her, and 2029 is the consensus year of when the most important aspects of those prophecies come about. So reading those books right now is really important for everybody.
And she also said that the portal that she's talking about is located in the mind.
Mm-hmm. The Nostradamus connection is just so huge. And I spent quite a bit of time with Dolores in the years before she died. And, Dolores could be enigmatic, and she was such an interesting, wonderful woman. And I would talk to her a little bit about Dolores. And for the most part, notwithstanding what you've just shared, Holly, she would say, when people would ask in classes, she would say that for the most part, things, energetics, timelines were changed. I don't know that that it's anything that can be considered nothing to think about anymore. But she has come through in communication in my own life where it has been absolutely stressed that one of the most important things about her work with Nostradamus was how she actually communicated, that type of communication, which is something that, somewhat different than going to a client's past life or a client, right? Basically for our listeners out there who are wondering what the heck we're talking about, imagine, if you will, this scenario, because this is what's going on with Dolores and Nostradamus. And how crazy is this? But she did this so regularly that she was able to publish 3 thick volumes. So this isn't like some one-off fluke. This is this thing that she did, and this is what she did. Pardon me. She would have a client who would go into trance. That client within trance would become kind of like a telephone or a conduit, a way for Nostradamus to speak through the client. Now imagine Nostradamus, and I'm going to forget how many hundreds of years ago it was. You gals help me how many hundreds of years ago he was alive. But so hundreds of years ago, what he's doing is he is in his study, and he is actually scrying. And the word is scrying, scrying, which is what we all kind of know as the wizard looking into a crystal ball. That's called scrying. You can put yourself into a trance and take yourself into other realms and other dimensions by using a crystal ball, by using a mirror. What Nostradamus actually used was a shiny piece of black rock called obsidian. And he put himself into a trance by, staring into a black rock. And what he ended up with was into the future talking to a person named Dolores Cannon. Now, how crazy is that? But it was repeated, over, months, and I'm not even sure. Over 4, 6, or more clients, I believe, different people. Right. And it's just this amazing, wonderful story. And when Dolores had this whole thing going on where she was talking with Nostradamus, the first client where this seemingly magic thing happened, she was a natural somnambulist, and she was a very great client for Dolores. And you know what? She actually just got tired of it. She was spending time laying on her sofa over at Dolores' house or whatever. And actually, this woman says to Dolores, if I'm remembering the story right, she says, Dolores, I'm going to have to go. I think I'm moving to Alaska. And Dolores is like, oh, no.
Right.
And says, gosh, before you do that, one more chance, give me one more session. And she has another session. She gets as much information as possible. And she tells Nostradamus, through her client, this is going to be our last session. And that's when Nostradamus says, oh, but it's not, because now I know how to get a hold of you. And Dolores is like, wow. And Nostradamus gives her like a secret phrase. And then Dolores sort of shrugs and goes on with her work. And then I'm not sure how long after that she has a client, just a regular client, gets all the way to the end of the session and says, is there anything else? And then the client, poof, says the secret phrase. And there Dolores is back talking with Nostradamus. I just love that story. And Holly and Barbara, I think one of my favorite stories, I just finished the story, but I have to tell another one because it's my favorite. Have you all heard about this story with Nostradamus and Dolores? So mostly, they have people out there talk about Nostradamus experts, the theory of Nostradamus. Well, to be very, very plain and honest and direct here, Dolores simply said, hey, Nostradamus, what did you mean by this quatrain? And Nostradamus would say, oh, I meant yada, yada, XYZ or whatever. All she did was basically be a secretary. She didn't theorize. She just took the words straight from him. It was direct. It wasn't any thinking. It wasn't being, she didn't have theories or here. This, it was a direct conversation with Nostradamus. So it was pretty, if you think about it, it was just kind of, dictation for hours and hours and hours with all of his stuff. And
too, Candace, and Candace too, when she first made contact with him, she had never read anything about him.
Right. She didn't even know how to spell his name. She had to go look him up afterwards. I mean, that's amazing. And, we all as QHHT practitioners find ourselves. I remember, first like writing down the word Arcturus, what? I'd never heard of it before. But just to finish out this little story, and then I definitely want to let your ladies talk about that. But I think this may be one of my favorite stories about Dolores. So at one point they're kind of finishing up with the dictation, and it happens to be something about medicine. And Dolores says something about her doctor or whatever, and maybe mentioning something about her doctor and then using the term she. And I believe this is the part how it happened. And Nostradamus says, what do you mean she, the doctor, she? You can't be talking about a doctor if you're saying she. And Dolores says, well, yeah, in my time, there's people, doctors can definitely be women, and doctors and lawyers and scientists and astronauts and fighter pilots and, anything else. Women can do anything men can do. And Nostradamus basically says, get out. That's just not possible. And they have like this little tiny argument between each other. And my favorite part is that Dolores actually says, well, I'm a woman. And do you know that Nostradamus actually didn't know that until that moment?
They hadn't really discussed it, and it was this big revelation. But for me, the funny thing is this man is talking into a rock to a woman who's 400 or 500 years into the future, and this is believable to him. But the idea that a woman can be a doctor really just, is incomprehensible.
Yeah.
If I could be if I personally can go back into time at any point in time and go be a fly on the wall, I would go to that moment in Dolores Cannon's life with and conversations with Nostradamus. I don't know about you two, but that story just tickles me every time I think about it.
Yeah, and the whole book. And he would get upset at how horribly translated his quatrains were and how they had just gotten them completely wrong. Yeah.
Really great information about Nostradamus. Well, that was really fun. Well, how about we move on? What other kind of sessions have you ladies had? What kind of convoluted sessions or maybe the backdrop people? Can we talk about them a little bit? I believe that Dolores' new book, Convoluted 5, has a little more information in it about backdrop people. What did you two discover?
A lot. Barb, why don't you tell us?
This is a little project of mine, is to learn more about the backdrop people. And even from, I think it was I had a session with a wonderful woman who was an indigo, and I had asked about the backdrop people and that concept. And let's see, I'm trying to think here what was she saying about that? They are here to help us not feel sad or sorrow, because many people are already being taken off the planet. They're already going to the new Earth, to other dimensions and other places, other missions, and they're going in great numbers. And so if there's a lot of people missing, then people who are not consciously aware and awake will feel lonely. They don't realize that they're never alone. They have angels and guides and, of course, the higher self and God and everything with them. And so I had asked more about the backdrop people and what, how can you tell a backdrop person from a sentient being, an enlightened person who is on their path and learning their lessons here. And basically the backdrop people is a concept, a beautiful concept that the higher self or subconscious has come up with, and they can be different types. And I learned these varieties by asking through Holly sessions about the different types. So there's one, for instance, is considered a walk-out person. In other words, a person who has decided they are done. In fact, I have a dear friend who I know is a walk-out, and she leaves, and the human body is available for another, either a program to go in there or another being to go in there and use that body. And the personality will be changed. The person may become what would be disinterested, or they get upset easily about the smallest of consequences and things about life. And that's one of the programs that the higher self has put in to these backdrop people. It's programming of complaining. People are used to complaining, and so you feel like, well, this is pretty much normal. It's like having white noise in the background, so you don't feel lonely. like turning on the TV or the radio while you're home alone and doing your business. We also found out that there is something, what's called a human suit, and that's where you have a physical body that is the soul leaves, that personality leaves, and now this suit is available for specialized beings in the universe that need to come and do some work. They may come in to that body, do their work, and leave, and another one comes in. And these are beings that are here to help the planet evolve, and they're helping with, well, things like settling disputes, changing the dynamics, learning more about technology, advanced concepts, and let's see what else. Holly, is there another one that I'm forgetting about?
Yeah, the last variety is there are these. Of course, we're at the moment in 3D Earth of huge transition, and so there are souls that where the body exists, but they haven't yet committed to a full incarnation and a full mission on Earth. So they're still kind of sitting on the fence. So the body's operating day-by-day basis, but the soul is kind of going, I'm not sure I'm going to stick around for all of this or not yet. I'm not committed yet. And actually Barb had, I think Barbie had a client that might have been a variety of this type. But so there's the folks that have ascended, the millions and millions of folks that are already on 5D Earth, but yet the bodies continue, because if all those millions of people suddenly died, then the vibration of those remaining would go down, and that would be bad for the ascension of the remainder of us. So the bodies continue to go on, but they're backdrop people now. They're not real sentient souls, because the souls have already ascended. Then there's the suits that other entities can come in and out of at will, and then there's these varieties that, well, the soul hasn't really committed to the mission yet and is still testing out this human 3D thing before they commit. And then there's a fourth type that are the pure holograms. Your higher self manifests these things that appear to be other people, but they're nothing but a hologram. They don't actually exist as a person ever at any time, and they just come at you, appear before you for some purpose that your higher self has put in front of you. So I think Barb, those are the four kind. I think we got it.
Yeah, and do you remember, Candace, Dolores' Convoluted Universe, Book 4? And that's when she talked about the backdrop people and how she used to go into the airport and just kind of like wonder how many of these people are backdrop people. Well, she kind of played one on me when I left training last July with Holly. Holly drove me to the Albuquerque, New Mexico airport. And because of Hurricane Dolores was messing up the weather, we had wind and lightning storms. So I was stuck there about 11 hours at the airport. And I was reading one of Dolores' books, Jesus and the Essenes, and I'm sitting there by myself, and I look up, and there's this woman walking by, and she has the silliest smile on her face, and she's looking straight at me as she walks by. And I asked my higher self, who was that? And they said, Dolores.
So explain that joke for us. Did you think like that might have been a suit that Dolores jumped into so that she could grin at you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. she knows I'm very interested in doing this research about the backdrop people, and so she did a beautiful demonstration for me. I loved it.
Isn't that amazing? It's just amazing. And I'm thinking as you're talking about the different kinds of backdrop people, et cetera, and some other things that I've known about creation and holograms. It's my understanding. I think that I did some asking a client myself during a session about some of this. There's actually the idea if enough people give energy towards a hologram, and enough time passes and enough attention is placed on it. It's my understanding that even something like a hologram can graduate to some sort of more tangible, actual physical existence. Have you ladies ever run into anything like that?
Well, I had that one client that I'm pretty sure is one of the type that is not truly committed. She didn't have a very good session. In other words, it was very left brain for her. She would not get out of that left brain. And so I specifically asked about that client through Holly's higher self, and I was told that's who that person is. And so what I've been doing is praying and sending energy to that person so that they will, hopefully evolve to the best potential. Always be positive and send that love, that inspiration for those people.
Mm-hmm. And
do you have something to say, Holly? Yes.
Yeah, I think too, Candace. And one of the fantastic things about QHHT and the past life experiences is they aren't always human, right? Like I was saying, I was a bat, right?
Yeah.
I've been an ant. I've had clients that have been rocks, mountains, all of these seemingly inanimate objects, but they are a tree. So we have the ability to incarnate into anything, right, into any manifestation. And sometimes we kind of maybe put a little too much emphasis on the human experience, whereas there's some very, very wonderful, rich experiences that are not human. And in all cases, the soul and the spirit is seeking the lesson that it needs to seek in order for the soul to grow. And that may or may not be human. And so bringing a hologram, blessing and praying and focusing on bringing a soul a hologram into being, into sentience, I think really has to be the decision of a soul to choose that vehicle to incarnate in, and then the incarnation has to be serving a purpose for that soul. And it may or may not be a backdrop person or a hologram of a person, but it could be as a rock or a tree or a mountain.
Yeah. However evolved they want to be.
Mm-hmm.
What they signed up for.
When I think about some of this, I also think about the tendency of humans as a group to also want or yearn for something. And what I'm thinking about right now is something like when a beloved person passes away, and let's take the ever-present, sometimes joked about idea that people see Elvis Presley and have seen him after his death. I've asked about that in sessions sometimes too.
And some of what that is, people will say, well, I was here or I was there and I saw Elvis and he did this or whatever. And some of that is, my understanding is that human consciousness, there's enough people gathered, interested, wanting, yearning to see, to feel, to have that personality back, that it actually manifests something that other humans can see and talk about and think is actually physical. It's astonishing how much power we have.
Right. I think too that this also speaks to, Candace, the near-death experience, and I'll align that with what we do in QHHT, and the goal, the ideal in a QHHT session is that we take the client through the death experience in their past life situation, because we want the person to understand how smooth and how smooth that transition is, and how not frightening, how peaceful that death experience really is. That takes away a lot of our fears on a day-to-day basis when we understand how easy that transition is. And some people, we have the NDE experience where some people say, they see the tunnel of light, or they see Jesus, or they see their grandmother greeting them, or whatever. And we can have that in the QHHT experience as well, in the death experience. I saw Jesus, or I saw something. And these are manifestations that we make to the purpose, I think, is to calm ourselves. There's a purpose there of that manifestation. Whether it's real or not real doesn't matter. It serves a purpose.
Holly, you make such an excellent point about going through the death experience. Humans, especially in our time right now, we don't tend to honor death. We tend to fear it. We certainly tend to avoid even talking about it. And there's something quite fascinating that we learn doing this work. And one of the things is exactly what you said, that it's really it's a very easy transition. What's hard is the people who have to stay behind. That's who it's difficult for. And as a matter of fact, some people will talk about maybe torture or some sort of horrible death, or being burned at the stake. And haven't you ladies found this? And isn't this interesting that you can, in these sessions, learn that the soul leaves while the body still may be apparently in a lot of trauma, in a lot of pain, or maybe, even yelling, etc., and the soul's already gone. They are not experiencing that. I've found that over and over again. Haven't you?
Yes. Well, we help them not to feel any discomfort. And so they're able to look at what happened and talk about it, and it's all recorded. I also give my clients an example so they know what it's like, and to see that it's just like watching a movie.
Yeah. And I think this goes back to the backdrop people as well, too, because I think the soul has the ability to exit when the soul chooses. I explained to a lot of my clients that I've had clients that were a rock. Their past life was a rock. Talk about boring. Oh, my gosh. That's an incredibly boring existence. And so one interesting question is, well, how does a rock die, right? How does that soul ever exit the rock? Well, the soul just chooses to exit the rock. The incarnation is complete, the contracts are complete, and the soul chooses to leave. The rock doesn't have to die, because a rock can't die. The soul just simply chooses to leave. And it's kind of the same with the backdrop people.
Holly, I'm going to have to take a little exception to your boring comment, just a little bit. because I don't know about you two ladies, but I've had lots of rocks. Lots of rocks. And when I talk to clients about this, I think it's very interesting because if you think about our lives right now, how frenetic our lives are right now. I think about how many hours of sleep I had just last night, when I woke up, when I went to office today, how I got home, and how I threw the computer, over here, and I'm like, it's 3 minutes till showtime. I mean, it's our lives are so frenetic right now, and sometimes having a QHHT session, our clients are shown lives as rocks. Well, what does that rock get to do? That rock just experiences time passing, erosion, a lizard walking by, the clouds. There's this peacefulness, and there's this expansion of, and a very different perception of what time is. And one of the fascinating things about doing this work is we can go with our clients into these experiences, somebody who's experiencing a rock, and while they're experiencing a rock, and they're able to live and notice what's going on, and let's think about it, to be solid, to be grounded, to be rested, to not be frantic, to notice what's going on around you. And while you're being a rock, you get to go, oh yeah, I can maybe do that a little bit in my life too. It's like you're reminding yourself as a human what is also possible for you. It's really kind of amazing. When you go back and you have these quote-unquote past lives, you can bring forth and experience and then kind of reinvigorate and bring back skills and knowledge and peace and balance in some of these ways. So there's some real reasons why people are experiencing lives as rocks, even though we all sort of giggle about that because everybody thinks, that it is quite dull and it is quite unmoving,
right.
I suppose.
Right. Right. Fair enough, Candace. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So how about like the strangest thing that you could ever that it took you a long time to figure out exactly what it was that your clients were experiencing, and I'll start with my own example. One of my clients, one of the longest times that it took for me, lots of back and forth questions before I could figure out what is it that you're experiencing. This woman ended up telling me and was able to say that she was a piece of gravity existing on a certain spot on the moon.
Wow. That's crazy. I guess the most unusual one that I ever had was a client who is somnambulistic, naturally somnambulistic, meaning, and for those that are listening that might not understand that word, they are out. In the trance state, it's like they're under general anesthesia. They have zero awareness of the conscious surroundings. And so the client was somnambulistic, and it turns out that this client is living a simultaneous life on a different planet. And that was really quite disturbing. In the somnambulistic state, she was really wrestling with trying to basically experience these two simultaneous existences, and is still living that simultaneous life on this other planet today. So that was a little bit of a mind bender.
And you said it was a woman. How did she feel about it when it was all over? I mean, when you debriefed and talked about what happened.
Yeah. the whole QHHT experience for her was life-altering, absolutely life-altering. Changed her entire concept, belief, structure, and we ended up having several sessions and investigating it further and further. So yeah, it was life-altering. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Barbara? What's some of the most kind of mind-bending, it took you a while to figure out what your client was experiencing kind of session that you've had?
Well, I never had a rock, but I did have a client with a tree, which was very, very lovely, and it was a very beautiful experience. But the one that had me wondering what is going on here was a client who was a mermaid. And what was interesting is usually, and Dolores has said this in her books, you come off the cloud, you come down to the surface. Well, she didn't want to go down off the cloud. And I just thought in my head and said, would you like to go up? And she said, yes. And she realizes she is now in the water as she's going up. Now, at this time, she's laying on the bed, and her arms are flailing back and forth through the air, almost hitting me. I'm dodging her arms. You can imagine being in the water, going through the water. And her journey as a mermaid was to go to the surface. There was some danger lurking for her to go up to the surface of the water. So we explored her fear of this, and this was one of her missions as a mermaid. And she was able to go through that fear, very lovely, and she made it all the way to the surface of the water, and then she realized she can't go back. She's completed her journey. So then she makes her way to the shore and kind of like moves her body up on the sand to the rocks. And while she's laying there, she becomes a lizard, a huge lizard. And after that, we explored the lizard's life. And the lizard eventually was in the area at the time where the earth was still, after it had been formed, there were volcanoes. And she was pummeled by rocks from an explosion and the cataclysmic flow from a volcano. And she, of course, she went through the death scene very beautifully. So that was my most amazing one that I really enjoyed, which kind of had to, like, make up, if you're not going to go down, why not go up? And found out it was the perfect direction to go. So that was fun.
That does sound like fun. I just had a mermaid about a week ago or so. So for her, she was like, well, I think they're clouds. Those are the strangest clouds I've ever seen. And she's like, I don't know, they're kind of purple clouds. They're kind of heavy. They don't really. And what she was actually talking about was waves underwater. She was seeing, like, different kinds of water moving past her, but, she hadn't quite settled into the experience yet. And she was, so she's thinking she's in the sky and that these are clouds. And, at some part she just doesn't know. And so I have her do the thing that all QHHT practitioners know to do, which is say, well, how about turn around? What's behind you?
Oh, yeah.
and she turned around, she said, what's behind you? She said, it's a fish. There's a fish behind me. It's this big yellow fish, and that's when she's like, oh my gosh, I'm in the water. And then that's, we figured out some of the same thing. And you're right. My mermaid also had a I'm going to go to the surface, even though I've been told by my other mermaid people that I've known that can be a very dangerous thing. Very interesting.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I think it's the lesson was about walking through that fear. And
It was so interesting. She in the end she was like, and she hadn't even told me this in the interview, but she loved swimming, and suddenly she was like, gosh, I love swimming. And it was also her higher self actually had told her about being different. Some of this was being different because she was actually hauled up in a net by some men on a boat, and it ended up being the death of her. And she had a really interesting death experience as that mermaid. She just basically in the net and looking at these men, and they were poking her with a stick. You can imagine humans doing that. It's like, what the hell is this? Well, and they just, this stick poking and pulling her up out of the water like that basically killed her. And she didn't fight, and she didn't yell, and she didn't scream, and it wasn't traumatic. She was like staring them in their eyes, and then she just kind of left her body, and she was gone. It's kind of sad. Yeah. But she was so shocked. She was so shocked when she couldn't even really say the word mermaid. She'd already kind of figured out that she would be able to accept the concept of a past life, but not a mermaid life. And her higher self, I said, well, why did you show her that? Why did you show her that? Well, because she thinks she has an open mind, her higher self said, but she really doesn't.
That's funny.
So how about some healing stories, ladies? We've got half hour or so more to talk. Can you talk to me about some of your best healing stories? I'd love to hear some of them.
We have lots.
Go
ahead, Holly.
One of the things that we did in our shared sessions in Arkansas was some surrogate healing, and that worked fabulously. I think Barb, we had 4 surrogate. We did healing surrogately for 4 people, 4 or 5 or maybe more in one session.
While I was you facilitated for me, and we did 4 in that one. That's
incredibly amazing because we aren't allowed, or we choose not to practice with children, the people under the age of 18, and now knowing what I know about surrogate healing, this is an incredibly powerful way to get healing to people that can't be in a session either because of their age or maybe their infirmities or just geographically. If one person has a very close connection with it, it's usually a family member, a very close friend, then they can ask for healing through the client. And what happens is then the client's higher self contacts that person who's the target of the healing, contacts that higher self, seeks permission to do the healing, and then can report back and conduct the healing with the client's higher self. And what Barb and I found is that not only can the healing happen between, so for example, I was facilitating, Barb was a client, we asked for some surrogate healing for people that she was close to, but I also asked for surrogate healing for people that I was close to as the facilitator, and we got the surrogate healing. So it didn't even have to be people close to Barb, but it was people close to me as the facilitator. That was interesting, the surrogate healing.
And in that, the one person that I'm close to is reporting that the low back pain of 22 years is completely gone. Pretty darn phenomenal for QHHT. It's amazing. Amazing. And Holly, did you want to share what happened with you or not?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Remember
sure.
what the higher self said to you?
Yeah. So, again, I'm facilitating. Barb's the client. And I shattered my knee 4 years ago in a skiing accident, and I have 2 plates, a bolt, and 4 pins still, the metal in my knee. Well, we don't know still, do we, Barb?
Not yet.
So I asked for healing on my knee. I first asked, I said, does the metal affect the flow of chi in my leg at all? And Barb's higher self said, no, it doesn't. There's no worries there. And then Barb's higher self said, I said, okay, fine. Is there anything I should know about it? No. And then Barb's higher self said, would you like the metal removed? I mean, unprompted by me, the higher self said, would you like the metal removed? I said, sure, why not? Well, it just so happened it was kind of, late in the session here, and I was sitting in a chair by the bed, as we usually are as we're facilitating, and I was slouching. Okay, I was just kind of in a real terrible posture, just slouching in this chair. And, of course, Barb has her eyes closed. She's in trance. Her higher self is speaking, and her higher self says, well, I need you to sit up straight, dear. So I sat up straight. And
of course, my eyes are closed, so I have no idea what's going on. So,
right.
Yeah,
so I sat up straight. Yeah, and then Barb's higher self speaks to her in this mathematical language. It's really pretty amazing. And so her higher self starts chanting this mathematical language, and then tells me that they've installed a program to then remove the metal from my knee, but then they said that I needed to have another session with her to install the next program, and so we did. A few days later, we did that session, and then installed the second program. So interesting stuff about me being the client and yet being the facilitator and getting healing from the client in trance.
Yeah. That's so fascinating. I have so many questions. Dolores always says, being curious. This is where, if you're somebody who is sitting out there listening and you can just imagine all these other questions to ask, then you are aligning with the energy of Dolores Cannon, because that's where she was. So may I ask a couple questions about your knee, Holly? Would that be all right?
Sure. Yeah, sure.
Sure. So one main question is, did you just flat ask for the healing but not ask, why did I have that problem, or why did that happen to me to begin with? Or did you just plain say me, I have, how did that part of it work?
Well, yeah. Well, I had sessions at a different time with other practitioners. I've been so blessed in this whole QHHT journey, Candace, with always being near other QHHT practitioners. Even here in Durango, I am. And I had multiple sessions where I had my knee investigated and evaluated, and I had asked questions about the reason, and it's my left knee, by the way.
I was going to ask that.
I knew you were going to ask that. And so I won't share it, but I do know the purpose. I know the purpose of the injury and all that. And so, ironically, in this particular session, I was really only worried about the chi. I really was. It wasn't necessarily giving me pain. I had actually, through QHHT, had all of my knee pain taken away, and successfully. And I was just really worried about chi, and that was it. And so it was just hilarious that Barb's higher self goes, well, don't you want the metal taken away?
I love it.
I actually, I remember the first time that I had that happen, and it was very strange. I had 3 out of 4 clients in a row came to me, all women, and they all had metal in their body. And I don't even know how it was that I asked, but it sometimes you probably feel this or have this happen to you as practitioners yourself. Tell me if this is true or not, where suddenly you hear kind of like a question come out of your mouth and you think, wow, that was a pretty good question. Where did that come from? I don't know about you, but I have that. I'm like, wow, that was pretty good. And one of them was about the metal. I was like, well, can you, replace the metal? And I thought, wow, I haven't heard. It's like I'm listening myself ask that question. And the higher self, the subconscious, agreed. And then I quickly had, 2 other clients, and the same things had happened. And one client in particular, I'm not sure about what happened with the others, but I was so astonished by the concept that the body could replace metal with bone and tissue that I made a call to Arkansas to find out if it had happened in Dolores' sessions, because I hadn't heard her talk about it or anything. And it's one of my most favorite memories of calling out over there. This was several years ago, of course, but my favorite thing is like we had the session like almost on the exact same day. It was just that week too. She had the same thing happen, which I just find astonishing how these things kind of group together, either in our own practice or with others. Isn't that interesting?
Well, it's just like salvo, a grouping that occurs when you have a yard sale. You'll have a whole bunch of people come, and then it's quiet. Then another bunch of people, it's like they're batching people to come to your yard sale. That's happened year after year that I've done yard sales. If I could share some of the healings that I've heard from my clients, they're just so wonderful. There's one lady that I regressed, and we discovered that she has a parallel life as a reptilian in a very, very loving relationship, and has a family as a reptilian. And she shared with me that the shoulder and neck pain that she's had for 5 years is totally gone. And even a month after the session, it was still gone. Another person said that they're off their antidepressant medication. Life just keeps getting better and better. I had one woman who had multiple sclerosis. She's off all her medications. People who have been addicted to alcohol, and that's all gone. Smoking, gone. If they don't want to engage in those behaviors, then and they're ready to release it, it's gone. Headaches, blood pressure is normal at the doctor's office. Negative entities around a person, that was a phenomenal healing that was done. One person said it was like a magic switch was turned on, and they got up the next morning and they felt the best they ever had in their entire life. And they felt they had the strength and tenacity and focus now to pursue their dreams. Another popular one is gastric reflux. They take care of that like it's a sneeze. It's no problem. One woman, very important was her career. She has more clients calling her now. And one of the most phenomenal sessions I had was a man who snored through his session. You think, man, on the outside, that this man received any healing at all. Well, when we finished, I said, you had a healing. I just knew it. And sure enough, the next day, he told me that he had the worst headache of his life. This man has migraine throughout the day, so bad that he has to get Botox injections around his scalp. Headache completely gone. And another fascinating thing was the tinnitus, which is known as ringing in the ears. of 18 years completely gone. And he said that was worth it right there.
Sure.
So I think it's important to note too, though, that sometimes the higher self, chooses not to heal for a reason, and we have to remember that all of our ailments, our physical manifestations in our body, are messages. Right? It's a way for the higher self to talk to us and send us messages. And you know, when you know, let's say for example, I had a client actually just a few days ago that had really terrible stomach pain, and you know, so we're in the session and I'm asking the higher self, can you please take away the stomach pain, and the higher self says no. Well, okay, why? Well, because he needs to quit drinking. So, you know, the manifestation of the stomach pain is a message of a different problem. And so even if the remedy doesn't happen there in the session, at the very least we can find out what the message is and why the ailments manifest, and then what the client needs to do to correct it. So,
that's a really great point.
That's a good point, Holly, because I facilitated a session for a chiropractor who was born, we found out, with an anomaly in his spine that's seen on X-ray. And people would know that in the medical community as spondylolisthesis. And the higher self said they will help diminish some of the discomfort, but it's there for a purpose, to remind him what his patients are going through.
Yep. Gosh, you know, just today, I had a session where a young man, a musician, and part of his problem was he had some pretty good shoulder, back, and neck pain, and we asked where it was from. It came from his father's side of the family. And, you know, where did that come from? It came from some negativity and some other things. And then we asked, well, has he learned from it? Can he release it? Can he let it go? And it was very interesting. His higher self said, not all the way, because he was a musician, and he was very, very young, just 20, very young man. And he needed to have that experience of what human pain was to deepen the message and the effect and that his music has on other people. It made him more complex and more understanding as a human. Isn't that interesting? So he was supposed to keep some of it.
Right. This reminds me a little bit, Candace, of Natalie Sudman's book and her near-death experience. And she's died. She's on the other side. She comes back. She ends up coming back. But her and her spirit guide are on the other side, knowing now that she's going to come back, that it isn't a death experience, it's a near-death experience. And they're laughing hysterically at all of the possible injuries that they could give her. Oh, if we cut off your right hand, you're going to have to learn how to write with your left hand, and that's going to be absolutely hilarious. And they're making all of these plans and setting all these strategies of the injuries that she's going to have for the purpose as she comes back into body. And they just think it's hysterical, the injuries that they're going to give her.
I love that book. There's a lot of people I know who considered it too cerebral, and it's a really thin book, and I'm telling you got to read it slow. There's a lot packed into that book, but I talk about, and reference that book all of the time. There's a lot of wisdom in there. Natalie actually spoke at our second practitioner reunion a couple of years ago, and she's a painter, and she's kind of an amazing woman. Really, really enjoy speaking with Natalie Sudman. What a great thing to mention here in our program.
About that. And just for the listeners, it's Sudman, Natalie Sudman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Great book.
Yeah. It really is a good book. Uh-huh.
Can we take any questions from the listeners, or is that doable?
Sure. If there's I've been watching the phone lines. I don't see any there. None of our phone people have their hands up. I've been watching the chat room. If there are any questions, it is probably a good time to pose them either in the chat room or to give us a call. I'll remind everyone that the number is 646-716-8890. If you'd like to call in and ask a question or put one in the chat room, we'd love to take it. We've been talking now for a couple of hours and might wind it down this evening. Ladies, it's been so much fun to talk to you. I mean, I think we could just go on for hours. I think that means you might have to come back.
Oh, we would love to.
So many different things we can talk to. Well, I don't really see any questions coming in or anyone's hands up. How about we just take this time to tell our listeners how they might be able to find you if they're in Arizona or in Colorado, and if they'd like to head your way for a session. Barbara, how can our listeners find you?
Well, I have a website. It's BarbaraBeckerHealing.com. That's BarbaraBeckerHealing.com. I also have email at BarbaraBeckerHealing@gmail.com. And also my phone number is on my website.
Right.
That's
super.
The way to do it. Also, the practitioners, find a practitioner on the websites. So.
Yeah, that one of the best websites to go to find a practitioner in your area are our dedicated practitioner listings, which are photo listings, and you can kind of see the area of the country, etc. And that is a direct URL of Dolores Cannon, QHHT.com. That's Dolores Cannon, QHHT.com. Holly, how can our listeners find you?
Sure. So I'm in Durango, Colorado, and my website is awarecaredurango.com. So AwareCareDurango, awarecaredurango.com. And our location in downtown Durango is shown there on the website. I practice in the Mountain Medicine Clinic, great little clinic with lots of enlightened caregivers. And my email is awarecaredurango@gmail.com.
Super. Well, okay, and anyone who might be in the heartland in Kansas or passing by and passing through who'd like to possibly have a session with me, you can find me at newearthjourney.com. I also have a bi-weekly Tuesday radio show called New Earth Journey, which is on BBS Radio. Do a little expansive talking there, changing the subjects, get a little bigger than the quantum healing focus that we have here on this show, Quantum Healing with Candace. I would like, again, to thank In5D for allowing this show to be created and bringing this method to the world. It really is life-changing for so many. I'd also like to thank everyone who tuned in to listen today. And I like to thank those of you who are listening to us in the future, maybe in an archive, because we love the idea of the timelessness of being able to connect with others in the future and go through time and space, which is what we do with QHHT.
Holly and Barbara, this has truly been such an enjoyable couple of hours. I hope you had a good time as well.
Yes.
Thank you, Candace. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so
and it's
much.
always great to talk to you.
Thank you so much, ladies, and I truly would love to have you back. And good night, everybody, and thank you for tuning in. Till next time.
Thank you, Candace. Bye-bye now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.